And then it's a blame game. Like you said earlier, it's somebody else's responsibility to deal with behavior. I'm here to teach, right? And there are a lot of teachers who believe that system, that I'm here to teach. If kids having problems, I write a referral and let somebody else deal with that. So it's a high, blame game. Then the administrators say if those teachers do a better job of classroom management, behavior management, those kids won't act out. So it's kind of the blame game, the reason why those systems are not in place. Then attitudes. Why do good things for bad people? We know our ED population have a reputation, right, of being the worst kids in school. So why would we do things for bad people? So all those things impact why behavior systems are not important in school. All right?
One of the things that we found over the last few years that we've been doing this, we started working with the districts back in 2000, and as PBIS started getting more of a foothold around the country, we started seeing these initiatives being supported more strongly. And then with RTI obviously coming around and the attention paid to RTI for behavior, those have been two initiatives that have really helped kind of address some of these obstacles that occur. So there's more resources dedicated. I think still one of the challenges that's not up there that maybe should be up there is, all of you guys obviously know who your chief academic officer is, right? But where does behavior reside? Behavior could reside in several different places in a district, right? So, a lot of times when we go in the first time, they'll bring the person who's responsible for discipline. But that's not necessarily the person who's connected to the PBIS initiatives. And then in special education, you have the consultants that go on a school level. And then at the individual campuses, you'll have an assistant principal who maybe is assigned to it. So I think that's one of the other challenges, is that the responsibility for behavior tends to be spread out across districts, and it's not housed in one place. So that when we try to implement these systems, as you were talking about earlier, it's hard to monitor who's doing what, but it's also to know who's going to keep the people accountable to the systems. And so that's one of the things that we tend to address. What we find, particularly for the latter two of those parts, is that the importance of data is obviously critical. We need behavioral data to really help make better decisions about how we're going to serve kids, where are we going to serve kids. One of the projects that we worked on together was that Dallas ISD was in the process of implementing inclusion for kids with behavioral issues. And we know that the kids with the severe behavioral problems tend to be the last ones to really be included. There's a lot of concern about getting those kids back in the general ed. I always say that principals, the first time that a kid spits at a teacher, that always lives on forever. And the idea of returning that kid back to those teachers' classes is very difficult. So having data is critical to support these types of initiatives. And when we started working with you guys, I think you guys had 45 behavior units, right, self-contained. And so what we did was we designed a process to implement, using the software to implement the behavioral system the district had in place in their behavior classes, and then being able to collect that data and building really kind of a portfolio for the students so that we can determine which students were demonstrating good progress and which students weren't. And then when students hit a certain threshold of progress, taking that portfolio back to the home campus and making the argument to the principals that this kid's really ready to return. So that was something I think that was quite effective. Obviously, compliance drives everything, so many different initiatives in special education. What we know over the last few years, kind of data has become the new compliance. And getting that data is now the challenge that we have around how can we collect it in a way that's manageable for the teachers. I think the other thing to kind of keep in mind around data is that if we require too much data too early, we just won't get it from teachers. One of the things that I'll say is that, we've done research from teachers and asking them what their favorite the characteristics of their favorite types of user-friendly data systems are. And the number one characteristic of those systems is that it doesn't require data. So that's a joke. It's just a feeble attempt at a joke. But because teachers don't like the idea of necessarily collecting data. So we have to be, and obviously everyone here in the room is very sensitive about the more requirements and more work that we put on teachers. So the other thing that we like to do is look at what existing processes are in place, and let's see how we can automate the processes for the teachers so that we can make it easier for them. And then the byproduct of that is obviously the information we need to really evaluate the outcomes for the students. So So that's kind of what we do with Review 360. And I'm going to show you kind of real quickly, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the outcomes we were seeing when we improved behavioral outcomes for students. What we wanted to show you a little bit of was what they were talking about in the plan. You know, with the system, what generally happens is we identify the behaviors that the teachers are working on. And for the kids in your behavior programs and special education, obviously the data we want to collect for them comes from the student's behavioral intervention plan. So we want to have a way to collect that information about their objectives, because those are the behaviors that are driving the kids into special education and the demand for the services. So if we can look at how we can collect that information in a useful way, then we could use it in a variety of outlets, whether it's an IEP meeting, whether it's a placement decision, whether it's a program evaluation, or whether it's to determine how we're going to allocate resources more broadly and the effectiveness of our services. This is the part of the system where we're just collecting basic information about the kids. And this is the part of the system where they go through and identify what the problem is, the positive behavior that we're trying to promote. This is where the strategies come into place. It recommends different types of strategies we can use with students. Each strategy has implementation guidelines and little videos that teachers can watch in terms of how to implement the strategies. Being in a college of education, one of the things that we know is that of a survey of the college educations around the country, only 15% of them really had a class that focused on classroom management, specific to behavior. A lot of them will have classroom management, but they won't always address behavior specifically in their classroom management. If teachers come from alternative certification programs, the amount of training they typically get, according to the research, is 1 lecture. So it's about 3 clock hours. So, you know, we sometimes take for granted that people kind of know what to do for these kids, and they really haven't necessarily received the adequate training from the universities and their programs, I think, to help them implement these. So that's why, you know, we feel like it's important to provide them not only with what to do, but how to implement, and modeling and support for the teachers at the classroom level. The videos, one of the nice things about the videos is we have a lot of different strategies in the system, and we used a 2-step approach to decide which strategies we were going to create videos for. The first thing was we looked at teachers' actual use of the strategies, because that is an indicator to us of treatment acceptability, of intervention acceptability. We know from consultation literature, if a teacher doesn't consider something, and from common sense, if they don't consider something acceptable, they just won't use it. So we needed some indicator of acceptability, and that was their pattern of use for us. The second thing that we looked at was actual rates of behavioral progress. So we looked at actual rates of behavioral progress to determine which strategies were most effective. And I'll give you an example. One of the strategies that's most effective when implemented with fidelity is reinforcement. If you have 100 kids and the teachers are using reinforcement, approximately 70% of those kids, or 70% of the kids, will be meeting their goals 80% of the time or better. You still will have some kids who don't respond well to reinforcement, but it's a very effective strategy. So that's how we came up with what we're doing here.